Hey everyone, Peter from Rochelle Intermodal here, and welcome back to my series on building an N-scale signal. Now it's a bit icy here in the UK at the moment. We had a bit of snow earlier this week, but not much left, but it is a bit cold in here, so I'm not going to hang around. I need to put the heater back on again. So here we go with the part 3 of this tutorial. In this part 3 I'm going to be showing you how to install the resistors on the wires of the LED and test the LED and then install it on the layout. I'm just going to show you how to make a hole and put the wires through and get ready for connecting to the signal system. So let's get started. Okay, our next step is to prepare the LED, and we'll need to install a resistor on it and also just identify the wires so we make sure that we know which color wire, which wire goes to which color on the LED for connection to our system. So the way this particular LED works is when you get it out the packaging, before you do any work on it, you just identify the lengths of the wires. So what I normally do is I just hold the wire at this side here and I just gently pinch and pull on these wires just to separate the ends, separate each individual wire. And I don't know if you can see on the screen here, I'll try to do that. You can see the wires have got different lengths, so that's how it comes out the package. So before you do any cutting, you make sure you just identify which wire is which color. So the longest wire is the common, so that is the wire you'll be adding the resistor to. So I normally use a 10k resistor on that. The LEDs come with instructions on working out what resistors to use, and it also all depends on what signal system you're using, because some of them come with resistors built in. But I use a 10k resistor for mine. So that goes on the longest wire. The next longest wire is the red wire, the red light on the LED, the red color. So that's that one over there. The next one is the yellow or amber, and the shortest wire, which is that one over there, is the green light. So the first thing you want to do is to make sure that the LED works. Now what I've done is I've taken a standard 3-volt battery and I've soldered a resistor, 10k resistor, to the positive. So I can now attach my wires to this and check that I get the correct colors out of my LED. We're just going to go now and check that we've got the correct colors identified and that the LED works. What you also see on this as well is the ends of these wires have got the insulation scraped off. So this reddy orange color, or copper color I suppose, is the insulation on these wires. Now, these wires are very fragile and they have a very thin insulation over them. So when you first get them, as you can see there, that's a silver color, so that means there's no insulation that's been scraped off. And if you do cut this shorter, you'll obviously need to remove the insulation again. Now I normally burn it off with a soldering iron, the tip of a soldering iron. That's normally the best way to do it, because these wires are so fragile. You don't want to use a knife to scrape it or anything like that. So I generally just use the tip of a soldering iron and just burn the insulation off. But what you want is that silver color at the end. Then you know it's got no insulation on and it's going to pass the current through. So I'm just going to use these grips just to hold the signal while I test it so I can easily see the LED. Let's put it in the clamp there. Okay, right. So just twist that so we can see the LED. Okay, so I'm going to test the red and the red one first. So the common wire I'm going to attach to the positive of the battery. I'm just going to hold it against that, and I'm going to take the wire that should be the red and touch it to the other side. You can see there it lights up red. Now I'm going to go for the next one, which will be the amber. You can see there, you've got the amber colour, and then the last one's the green. And there we go. So that shows me that the LED is working and that the different lengths are correct for the different colours. So now I can go ahead and attach the resistor. Now what I normally do, because these wires are so fragile, to make it easier to attach the signal system, I take a thicker piece of wire here and I attach these thin wires to the end of that. I wind it around the end of those and solder them in place and put some heat shrink around them. And that gives it a bit of a stronger connection and easier to mount into the signal system, because a lot of them use a screw terminal, and it'll be easier to put that into the screw terminal than to put this very, very thin fragile wire. So I'm just going to connect those up, and you'll see I use different colour wire, so I know exactly which colour is which. So I use the coloured wires. So I've got the green, red, amber and white. White is the common, and I can identify straight away which colour is which just by the colour of the wire. And what I also do as well is on the common wire, so the one end is connected to the thin wire going to the signal, going to the LED. On the other side I attach the resistor to that end, solder it on, and then the other end of the resistor goes into the screw terminal of the signal system. So it's just an easy way of doing that. So let me prepare the wires and attach them to this thicker piece of wire now. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get rid of the insulation on the end of these wires, just to give me something to attach the thin wire to. Okay. Oh, these are great. Now this tool is really, really useful. It makes it just so easy just to remove the insulation instead of having to use a pair of pliers or scalpel blade, which I used to use. I just go like that, and simple as that, it's removed. Okay, so I've got all my wires done, and what I do is I just twist. Now this is multi-core wire. You can use solid core if you want to, depending what you want to use. So I'll just twist these together, make sure it's solid. And last one. Okay, so those all twisted together. Now I'm going to start with the common wire. So I just pull these out to make sure I've got the lengths. Let me just get that out of the way. And I can see there that's the longest one over there. So you've got to do this very carefully because these wires are so thin. What I generally do is I just put it on the end like that, and I just twist it round like that. So now that gives me a connection, and I will now go and solder that. I don't have the soldering iron near this table, but I will go and solder it, and I'll show you what I do after I've soldered it. Okay, so I've soldered the first wire on. Let me show you what I've done there. You can see over there the thin wire is now soldered securely onto the thicker white wire. So that's my common. I will now put some heat shrink on it just to make sure it's all protected. So I use a very small heat shrink tube. You can see that it's pretty tiny. And I'll just measure the size of that. So what I'm going to do, I normally do a length like that, so make sure it covers the entire exposed bit of wire, and you can see also the insulation at the end there. I don't want any exposed insulation, so that one should pretty much cover the whole lot. So I'm going to slide the insulation over the wire, and I'm going to put it about over here. So make sure that the wire on this side is covered and any bare insulation is also hidden by the heat shrink. So now I'll go attach that using the soldering iron, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so here's what it'll look like when it's finished. So I've added the heat shrink over the exposed wire, so that's what it should look like now. So you've got the heat shrink holding everything in place. There's the little thin wire coming out to the LED, and I'm now going to do the same for all the other wires, so for the red, orange and green, and then it'll be ready for the installation of the LED and then prepared to put it on the layout. So let me go and put the other wires on and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've attached the wires and the heat shrink. See over here I've got my 4 colors and it's all attached using the heat shrink to keep everything in place. Now the last thing to do here before we test it all is to add the resistor onto the common. So once again, the common is the white, well, that's what I'm using on mine, and what I generally do is I will cut that bit shorter, so because I want all of them to be the same length when I put them into the screw terminals of my signal system. So I will now get the resistor. So I buy these in bulk, just makes it a lot easier, a lot cheaper. That means I've got lots available if I need to use them. So I'll take that off there. What I tend to do is I take the white wire, I make this a little bit longer, expose the wire a bit more to remove some insulation, and then I can wind it around this end of the resistor, and then once I've done that, I then cut the end of this resistor to the same length as the exposed wires on the other side. So that makes it just a bit neater and makes them all the same length when I put them into the signal system. I'm just going to expose some more of this cable here so make it. Right, so I've got a decent length over there. I'm just going to twist it. This is not too coarse, I'm just going to twist it like that. So now I'm going to take some heat shrink and I'm just going to cut it down to size. I'm going to make it about the same length as the other ones, so I'll just chop this one in half. There we go. Okay, so slide the heat shrink over this one. Okay, so make sure you do that first, because obviously after the resistor's on you can't do that, as I've done many mistake I've made many times. Okay, so now I'm going to wrap this wire on here. Just put the wire at the end, hold it in place with my finger, and then just wrap it round like that. And make sure it's solidly on. Okay, there we go. So now that is securely on, and I'm now going to solder it in place and put the heat shrink over it. So let me go do that now. Okay, so I've now added the resistor and covered everything with heat shrink. I just leave this exposed, but you can cover this as well. I'll just leave it a bit exposed so I know for future what resistor I've used, just in case I need to remember at some stage. Obviously you can make notes and write it down, but I just do that so I can just see it at a later stage. Okay, so what I do now is I take all these wires and put them together. Put them together like that, and what I basically want is to have all of these around about the same length so that it is all neat when it goes into the signal system. So I just need to cut the resistor down, the resistor wire down to the same length as these other ones, or around about the same length. So I just take that and just chop a piece off like that. Okay, so there we go, all of it neatly done. So now the last thing to do is just double check everything is still working. Okay, so let's now test it. So we've got our battery with Now it's got the resistor on it, so I don't need that on this one because I've already installed the resistor on the end of this wire, but no harm in having 2 resistors, it'll still work, just be a little bit dimmer. So again, we'll put the common, we're going to test the red first. So we'll take the common and we'll attach that to the positive of the battery. I'll hold that in place there. Do it this way around actually, easier. So positive, the common's on the positive, and then the red, touch that, and we've got a red light. So that's working fine. So the next one we're going to test is the amber, or the yellow, and let's check that that one is the correct one, and there we go, we got the yellow, it's working fine. And finally the green, so common to the positive, and green, there we go, we got the green. So that is all wired up correctly. We've got our colours identifying which wire is which, and that is now ready to install in the layout. Now just one thing I need to mention, because it's happened to me a couple of times, because this wire is so thin and fragile, just be very careful when you've got these attached to the end of it, because it can get knotted very easily. You don't want it to be knotted, especially when you install it on the layout, because the next stage I'm going to be putting it through a hole in the layout, and if it's knotted I won't be able to put these through, because I'm going to put through each of these separately. So make sure that there are no knots, make sure you handle it very carefully so it doesn't get knotted up. And that is now ready to install in the layout. So part 4 of this video will be about installing this on the layout and connecting to the signal system. So I hope that helped you understand how to connect the resistors and get everything tested. Now in part 4, coming up in a couple of weeks time, I'm going to be showing you how to connect the signal to the signal system. If you've been enjoying this series and haven't yet subscribed, please click the subscribe button down below and click on that little bell icon to receive all notifications of uploads. So see you all very soon and enjoy your modelling.